Welcome to the Behavioral View. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Behavioral View. This is our mid-month Hot Topics episode, where I am happy to be here with my usual friends and a guest. I am Shannon Hill, Editor-in-Chief at CentralReach Institute, and our regular panelists are
Nissa Van Etten, the Manager of Assessment and Clinical Training here at CentralReach.
And Dr. Carrie Miller, Co-Director of Clinical Programming at CentralReach.
We're very excited to have a guest from Inside CentralReach today, and your name guest is?
So I'm Cass Bro. I'm the Manager of Educational Content at CentralReach.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for coming here with us today. We're excited. This is going to be fun. This is kind of a new endeavor for us. So you are our guinea pig inaugural guest. Are you scared?
No. I like all of you. I'll hang out with you anytime.
Exactly. This is a good group of people. We like to have fun.
So all of us, well, I'm sorry, Cass. This is not a true statement I was about to say. Carrie, Nissa, and I are just returning from ABAI. And Cass, you weren't there, but you know a lot about what was going on, right?
I do.
So I guess our first hot topic I will lob out there is takeaways from ABAI. What do you guys want to share about?
I really loved how I was able to fill my schedule with a lot of talks around compassionate approaches to behavior analysis, as well as neurodiversity affirming applications, being anti-ableist, and just respecting autistics. I think it was great. Some of them were like, welcome to the world of this. This is what this is, which, while I think the four of us have been studying these things quite intently over the course of a year or a few years, I think the rest of our field needs those introductions, right? They still need the welcome to the world of fill in the blank. So it's great to see those nicely attended and have so much response. Like the Hanley one, it was, Greg Hanley, Dr. Nasia, Leslie, and Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. And I put it in our stories. It was like a madhouse to get in. People were fighting. It was like, you could have sold tickets to that. I mean, it was intense, but it was a good talk as well.
So people were like throwing elbows to get into the compassionate care session.
Oh my gosh. And then the ABAI like referees or something, they're like, we're going to form a line and we're going to go this way. And it was like, come on, y'all. Like we're professionals. But then, I mean, they were counting seats and letting 10 people in at a time. It was intense. Yeah. So
I think it was great to be back in person. I think that was one of my favorite experiences. Is one, I'm new to CentralReach, so I think company culture is really important, and being able to meet some of the team members face to face and hug them in person was fantastic. It really helped affirm that company culture choice for me. But I also loved that what you're saying, Carrie, that there were some talks that were heavily attended, especially in the space of compassionate care, neurodiversity, really thinking that there were some talks that weren't heavily attended. So there were a variety of options for us to attend. And the ones that behavior analysts chose were the ones that our field is moving towards. So it's really nice to hear and see that. That's really positive. I had a great experience overall.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I feel like there's so many different things I want to say, and this is hot topics, and I'm supposed to go fast. So I'll try my best to speed the Southern accent along quickly. But number one thing is that, we tried to do a live episode of the Behavioral View from ABAI. It was a fail. I will go ahead and say now the majority of that is my fault because of my technical ineptitudes. But I think it was a good start for us. Maybe we can pick that up again in future years. I do want to throw a shout out to Karen Torciello, who was our guest, and to everyone who was there who was providing information on applications of behavior analysis in wide array. I always love seeing that we are not a treatment for autism. We are a science of human behavior, and we have many applications. So Karen, if you're watching, again, super sorry that my technology ineptitude made your stuff record with no sound. And we are inviting her back, so we will hear her on a regular episode. And I'm really excited about that. Now, having said that, I do feel like this is hot topics. We can't just talk about ABAI without talking about the big elephant in the room. So, I want to talk about the task force session that we all went to. Those of us who were there, Cass went to.
Cass would have been there if they were there.
Absolutely. Cass, I know you would have loved being there, and I know you have big ideas on all of this as well. So here's your opportunity to wedge in. But okay, so the thing I most want to say about it is I'm sorry that all the controversy prevented many people from being heard in their sessions that they've planned and worked for a very long time to provide to us. At the same time, it was necessary that we have that task force session. And I want to do a shout out to the people who attended, because I felt like there was a very clear message coming forward from the audience. Although there may have been a couple of dissenting opinions, by and large, it seemed like we're not as divided, or at least the people who were speaking did not seem as divided as one might have thought walking in there. So I don't know if that means that we're really unified more than we thought, or if a large section of people just weren't speaking.
Yeah, I think that's an accurate observation. I found it a little humorous, though, that they were trying to group the comments and conversations into different categories. Luckily, that was like put to bed, at least for the speaker side. If they still tried, but at least the speaker side, the first person to stand up was Wayne Fisher, right? And he was just like, I kind of got something in all these categories. I'm just going to go for it, which was really great. I mean, I was recapping to my husband, and he was like, did anyone get up in there and be like, so I'm pro, like everyone who talked about it seemed to be addressing whatever the categories were as they were kind of written, in the sense of saying, yes, it is bad with respect to public relations, and yes, it is torture, and yeah, everyone, it'd be kind of weird to see someone who would be like, you know what, I think that is torture, but I think it looks great for behavior analysis. I just thought the categorization was kind of was funny.
I was pleased that Wayne Fisher went first. I really was. I felt like it was important that a big name in the field came out and spoke. So I was grateful for the way he did it, and I thought he said what he wanted to say in a very dignified manner. So thank you, Wayne, if you're watching.
So I think the thoughts that I have about ABAI and the controversy, it's interesting that you were like, there weren't a lot of people dissenting, because I think actually mathematically that's getting less and less possible. And I'll tell you what my theory is on this, is that I don't think you can hear about assent-based ABA, compassionate care, and which are really all the same things, just sometimes using different words, right? But like the feel is the same. I don't think you can hear about it without doing something different. I think there are very few personality types who could learn about that and be like, actually, no, I don't agree with it. It's hard. It's one of those things that if you know better, you do better. And I have the sort of, I don't know, the ability to see how many people have taken courses just on CentralReach. And at this point, like our Ascent courses have been taken by largely more than a third of the BCBAs who are actively practicing,
That's
which means that
incredible.
just
That's fantastic.
I think that's a low ball, honestly, but I just to be safe. But I say that to say, if we're talking a third of the BCBAs that are out there know about this, then a third of the BCBAs, give or take a few, right, are doing better. And I think what happens is that what happened with even people in this space, which is that somebody hears about it and then is like, I want to do something with this, or I want to do something different, and then they tell someone else who then goes and learns more. So I think that I would like to say that we're in the majority now. And I don't know, I say that with, that I'm on those like Facebook groups where then somebody today talked about using eye contact, like, focusing on eye contact. And there were a bunch of people, some names that, we all know, who are like, here's the reasons that I definitely still do this. But they are in the minority at this point.
Yeah. Well, change is hard, and people dig in to defend themselves or what they've done in the past. And, I guess that's human nature, but I think you're right. And it's very exciting that many people are stepping up to learn more.
Some criticism that's coming from the camp who's saying like, I'm still doing this, is that we have clinical innovation that's faster than scientific publication. So
That's
hopefully, granted, give us 10 years to have a rich, robust like research line on these things, but maybe they will come once like there's more documentation and they're maybe not as exploratory as clinicians, just using our principles and finding really great practice. So.
I will say, though, that I do not think that the body of research supporting some of the things that are being thrown out there is okay in the punishment world are actually saying that when we look at long-term change. So, okay, hot topics. We're moving on. Change, things that are cool. The last time that we did hot topics, we talked about upcoming changes to requirements. Climbed out on a limb and said, I want the VCS to go away. And apparently I'm more powerful than I thought because the upcoming changes indicate that the VCS is going away in 2032. And I just want to say, hey, I'm very excited about that. Now, having said that, I am not trying to be insulting to anybody who is working in those programs or through those programs, educating themselves with those programs. I am simply saying that parallel fields do not allow shortcuts. And our field is important enough that it should be a full master's degree, in my opinion. And I'm very excited that we have this much time to plan ahead to make those changes to programs so that we can still educate people and turn out really good practitioners.
For sure.
So, go
we
ahead.
even have a hard time getting in everything that a clinician needs in a master's degree. The quality of a VCS, I mean, again, especially if people would approach it as the bare minimum, I mean, it's not adequate.
Yeah.
I also think there was a big difference, back when dinosaurs roamed, 15 years ago when we were talking about this, there was a big difference in what it felt like the career opportunities were. Like if you had told me at the time that I had already done 2 masters before I did a VCS program, if you had told me you have to go and do a whole nother master's to be part of this field, I probably would have said no, honestly, because it didn't feel like, at least at the time, maybe it was my own awareness, it didn't feel like the career benefits at that point would have, especially where I was in the career that I had, I don't know that I would have made that change, but I think now is a more established field, and especially 10 years from now is a very established field. It's not going to be necessary, I feel like, even from a person's perspective, to feel like, oh, if I'm an individual who already has a master's and I want to get into this field, it is worthwhile to go and do a full nother master's because I know that there are career opportunities on the other side that make that worthwhile from an individual's perspective.
Yeah. I don't think, I think of it as kind of a parallel of respecialization within psychology disciplines. So, I looked at that at one point in time that I thought it would have been more to my benefit if I had become a licensed school psychologist rather than having a PhD in educational psychology. And I did exactly what you said. I looked at it like, nah, I don't want to go through all of that. But I think the difference is when you just say a master's degree and you can add this on versus, you have to have these particular courses. I think that having these particular courses is certainly very important, especially some of the skills that we're struggling with as early career professionals. I think some of that can be helped through the master's degree. Nissa, what do you think?
I think I'm excited for it. I think right now we're seeing a lot of the onus on supervision, right? I think that if it's not in your coursework, that means your supervisor or your practicum site or your fieldwork site is required to offer that additional experience. And I think with the amount of time we have to prepare, we also have time for organizations and supervisors to prepare how they're going to support the process with the change.
Yeah.
So it's nice to be aware of, and I hope that the field takes advantage of this kind of head start and we start moving in that direction of systematically preparing this stuff for those accruing hours.
Absolutely.
Ooh, I have one other thought, which is I had students ask me about this in a VCS course that I was teaching this week, which is they were like, why isn't there a separate course on Ascent or like on compassionate care? And I was like, well, it's funny you should say that because I tell every university that I talk to, which is like a fair amount in what I do, like if you don't have one or more, hopefully in succession, courses on Ascent, essentially bedside manner on how to apply the science carefully, cautiously, and with client centered in the center, then you're doing it wrong, and you should be doing that. So my call to action would be that if you're a university that is going to be making this change and you are going to be planning out a master's curriculum, please add in specific multiple courses about Ascent and what that looks like in the same way that we need to learn all of the terminology and how it is best used and all the different ways that we can assess certain things. We also need to know how to do this, and don't assume that people just know, because what we've learned as a field is that we don't.
Or we can weave it into the classes that they have. So it's like you're talking about assessments. Great. Let's make sure that when we talk about this, we always bring up the topic of Ascent. You're talking about intervention. Great. Let's talk about it. Talking about measurement. Great. Let's talk about how we can measure Ascent and these. So I feel like if it's just bled through, if they don't have a separate course, would be amazing. But if they also don't have time for that, or manpower or anything like that, then finding ways to make sure that it's hit on in all of these other types of classes that they encounter.
Right. Yeah. I was going to say the same thing. It's similar. And then I guess it's even a subcomponent of ethics. And, they decided not to make that a standalone course necessarily, but to make sure it was weaved in everywhere because it's supposed to be a consideration with everything that you do. But I certainly don't object if somebody wants to add a course or two.
I think a big thing for universities is also just like ensuring that staff are doing it with the same amount of essentially fidelity, right? Like, are all staff doing this in the same way? Like, you can't take a course with me and not hear about Ascent at every stage. I'm like, oh, here's my soap. Let me climb up. Hang on. Like, I will do that every class, but if you have instructors, professors, faculty that are not doing that as much, you can really see the difference in the quality of Ascent education that people are getting. So I hope that however it is done, it's done well, and we have a long time to plan it. So let's hit it out of the park.
Absolutely.
For sure.
And I think in jumping on that, I just want to add my 2 cents that cultural diversity and cultural responsiveness needs to be included. If we're weaving that in, right, both of those components, Ascent and culturally responsive care, needs to be considered. And we know that's a new part of the ethics code as of January. So it's a great direction that we're moving in. And I think that as we have the decade really to prepare, there's going to be a lot of research that comes out in these spaces that supports this information.
Well, and I
Yeah.
even think that assent is a part of cultural competency. Like if you are
Yes.
right, like if you are actually listening to the people that you're working for and their culture and what they're saying, this was what works for me, then you have to factor in assent in there. So like those things are kind of married.
Yes, I love that. And I think in talking to different providers in the field, oftentimes a checklist is helpful. Understanding how to ask those questions. I think even reading an article and even taking a course isn't as helpful as here are some ways you can embed it into your practice. Here are some takeaways from this CEU or this talk that you've attended. Here are 4 things you can add tomorrow when you walk into that home to work with that client.
Well, Cass, don't you have a publication coming up that addresses some of those things?
I do. I don't know when it's coming, but it is coming. So I have gotten the gift of getting to work with Kristen Smith again, which I would just
Who doesn't love working with her, right?
I know. It makes me so happy. People are always like, do you guys want to do this? I'm like, I will literally do anything with her. If you're like, do you want to go make grilled cheese sandwiches for a year? I'll be like, yes. We will go and there will be so much data and it will be fantastic.
Exactly.
But yeah, we do have the good thing about the piece that we did, which I hope that it still has some process to go through, but it really like talks about the importance of assent, how it's connected through the ethics codes where it's stated bluntly and the ones where it should be inferred seriously. And then, Kristen's just a genius in talking about the ways of which organizations, practitioners, and client data can all represent that, which is, she's the genius in that. So I was happy to work with her again.
Awesome.
So winding things down, we do want to acknowledge we're starting to get some feedback from our audience and getting some mailbag questions. So I wanted to bring one of those up for today. Nissa, actually, this one came to you from someone who was watching, I think it was our last Hot Topics episode, actually. And they were a little outraged they were outraged, yes, that you used the term autistics in talking about people. So let's
outraged. What an intense word. First of all, I think being on a podcast is nerve-wracking, right? Everything you say is a permanent product. It can be interpreted in however the listener is interpreting your words can be spun in a different direction. And I will say I was trained 15 years ago in person first language. That was exactly how I was trained throughout my ethics courses, throughout my practicum sites, and had used that language until more recently, really working to listen to our clients, listen to the individuals who are asking us to use this language. And in the past year of my career, it has taken some time to be able to even use the word autistic because it doesn't roll off my tongue naturally. It wasn't what I've used in the last 15 years of my experience. So having said it in a podcast and now having caused outrage is, it creates a little nervousness in speaking up in these podcasts, but it is something that I'm trying to do as a professional to really respect those that we serve and listen to them.
Yeah.
Yes. I also just like props to the fact if someone's not outraged, you're probably not doing it right. So like congratulations for making someone outraged because that means that people are listening and that means they have strong feelings about what you're saying. So good on that. And I also like person first language was also what I was trained with. And I remember it used to feel like kind of spitting something out the first time that I used identity first language. But ultimately, like there are studies on this, which makes it really clean for data loving people, which is there are a vast majority of autistic adults ask us to use identity first language. Yeah. This is an easy one. This is a slam dunk. The community has come together and said, this is what we would like you to use. So this is what we use. Now, I think that it's important to note that that's not true for everyone. Mm-hmm. So when working with like an individual person, you can just ask, what would you like me to use? And that person can tell you what they would like you to use. But like ultimately, when we are speaking on a public forum, it's really important to use the language that the community has asked us to use. So props to you again. 2 props. You get 2.
Ooh, 2 slam dunks.
Cass, we'll include some of these references in the show notes because there's this one, and it wasn't, necessarily controlled research, but they surveyed over 11,000 people, and they
Wow.
have more data than they know what to do with. And their graphs were outstanding. So all of the data nerds that are out there going through that is just like, it's like you're eating a full bar of chocolate. Like, it's really exciting. And the data indicate exactly, Cass, what you said, that the community majority said they wanted to be called autistics instead of individual with autism. But they didn't just poll autistics, they polled everyone kind of related. So then it went to family members, and then friends, and like clinicians and stuff like that. So the further that away that you got from the human themselves with the diagnosis, the more it changed to person with autism. And it shows kind of like, okay, well, that's our practice, and that's what we're used to, and that's what we all grew up with, we know. But then if we want to go back to what people are asking for, as Kaz said, when you're speaking in generalities about the community, then that's the term to use, out of respect.
I also was going to say, I think it's interesting that you talk. I love that piece of data, by the way. It's one of my favorite. Their graphs are so cool. But I think that it's really important to know what makes you feel uncomfortable about it. Because to me, if like the community is saying, this is the language that I want you to use for me, and you feel icky using the language, like, what's the underlie of that? Because for me, so often it's internalized ableism, which is that the term autistics brings up some type of feeling. And then I think that's the thing to look at, right? Like, that's the reflection that can really kind of push our growth as practitioners and as like decent humans, to be like, what do I think about this label that makes me so concerned? And like, how am I going to change that bias so that I can be a better practitioner and human being?
Right. Why do
Oh,
you
what is
think
good.
you know more than the person who it's about? Right? They're literally saying, "No, man, I want a peanut butter and jelly sandwich," and you're like, "Here's some chicken." You know what I mean? Like, no, they're literally saying, "This is how I want to be called. This is what I need." And for us to disregard that, it's pretty arrogant.
So
True.
let me sit in the other seat for just a moment and say that the person who wrote in, and I needed to probably give some more context to that statement. They didn't identify themselves in terms of what they do and what population they work with. So it is very possible that this person's primary work is not within the autism community, but maybe in the greater developmental disabilities community. And, when you say icky about, I don't feel icky about it at all within the autism community, saying autistic. But if we try to generalize that, and I do think I feel uncomfortable sometimes in those forums, not that people are asking for identity first language, but that they are saying person first language as a concept is disabling. I think I'm pulled back into the fact that my primary service area was intellectual disabilities, and I don't know how to say that in identity first language, and I don't know necessarily that this idea generalizes to that community, that people with intellectual disabilities would necessarily want to have that as their primary identity. So I think there's a place for person first language. And
Definitely.
some of us who came from that field may be feeling that side of things.
Each community is
Person first
unique.
language still has,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go for it, Cass.
Carrie, you could probably knock this out, but I feel like
I think we're
person
going to
first
say the
language,
same thing. You are our guest. You
Yep.
take the spotlight.
I like person first language still has so much use. Like, we're not like saying death to person first language. Like, we're just saying if a specific community asks you not to use it, then we just adhere to that. And I find that like publicly, any of you who have ever presented with me, which is a fair amount of people on this show, will know that I always caveat when I say the first time that I say autistics, I always say, you'll notice that I used identity-based language or identity first language because that's what the community has asked us to use. And then I just keep it moving. And for me, that gives it's my own nervousness to have the exact moment to cause the outrage for someone to just be like, here's where you can find more information about that. Don't have time to talk about it because I'm here for something else.
Yeah. Yeah. I
You'll
just want
see
to make
that,
this more
like,
clear. We're not trying to
the
generalize
blind,
it to
yeah,
all this.
yeah, the blind
Go ahead.
community and deaf and hard of hearing, they use it a certain way. Down syndrome uses it a different way. Like, so it's just based on the community, and they're the ones, they're the experts, they're the masters who say, we like it this way. And those of us who are not in that community get to follow suit.
Yeah.
I also was going to say there's some parallels here that like have to be said with like the queer community. Like people have reclaimed the word queer, and it's the same thing. I have everyone who's above 50, whether queer or not, is like, that word makes me feel uncomfortable. And it's this thing of like, well, as a community, it's what we're asking you to use. And then individually, people may not use that. And like, you can do it. I actually wore my crystal queer pin just for this occasion, because it is a word that I'm like, it's, you know, if we ask you to use it, use it. And then if you don't feel comfortable using it individually as a person, like, you cannot do that. But ultimately, like, we get to decide.
This is
And in that same way, autistics get to decide.
That's right. And have you guys, have any of you read the book Far from the Tree?
No.
I just actually had started this, and I don't even remember how it got on my reading list, but it is done from a journalist perspective, a gay journalist perspective, where he's digging into this concept that what holds us together as a people is our differences, not our commonalities. And horizontal identity being the identity that gets determined in life, and vertical being what gets passed down through genetics and family, and how cruel we can be to one another whenever we medicalize things, and that even with something, and it is challenging, and Cassie, you and I have had this conversation before about at what point is it a medical disorder, at what point is it a difference, at what point is it a disability. So all of those tags are very interesting to me, and I kind of encourage people to read this book because it's coming from without our field, but talking about the things that we are struggling with within our field. So it's societal. It is not just about behavior analysis and the terms that we use, but how do we think about people who are different, and at what point do we medicalize that? So I would love to do another hot topic strictly on that one day. So, Cass, we're about to kind of bring this around. This is a guaranteed short episode. So, any closing thoughts you want to throw out there? Any good stuff that you have coming up? Anything like that?
Do I have closing thoughts? I'm always happy to be here with all of you.
Yeah.
So thank you for having me. I have, I don't think I have anything like major upcoming. I have a presentation at CR Unite. I'll have one or two probably. I have a presentation at the Nevada Association for Behavior Analysis.
Nevada.
Oh, I'm saying it wrong. It's their state. They get to decide.
We get to claim it.
That's right.
Even though the rest of America says Nevada.
Yes.
Believe me, I'm from Florida.
My wife and I have this fight about the word pecan. And I'm like, she's like, it's pecan. And I'm like, it's our export. We get to name it.
I am with you on that. I have strong feelings about pecan. That's
right. So, but yeah, so I have a couple of like presentations coming up there. My Sense stuff is all over CR Institute, and it's worth taking. Even if it wasn't mine, I would tell you to take it. Yeah. And I'm hoping to have upcoming some like neurodiversity and inclusion stuff coming up, which I think is fun.
Very exciting. And you did bring up CR Unite, so we will just throw it out there. That will be help me with these dates, October 24th through 27th. Is that right? Or
I believe it, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you should be getting stuff in your inbox if you're on the CR mailing list pretty soon.
I have to tell you, I looked up where CR Unite is and was like,
beautiful.
What are they doing for us? Yeah. I have never been more excited for a conference outside of Hawaii.
It is going to be amazing. Yes.
Coronado Island. wondering what we're talking about.
And it's classic Hotel Coronado. Yeah, we're just shutting it down.
Gonna be a great time. Yes. So thank you guys, all three of you, for joining me today for Hot Topics.
Yeah,
it
this
was
was
fun. It was hot. Appreciate
Yes,
it.
it was.
Thanks for watching this episode of The Behavioral View.